Good evening, dear listeners, and a very warm welcome to you all. Wherever you're tuning in from tonight, maybe cozied up in bed, listening from your favorite quiet corner at home, or perhaps relaxing somewhere peaceful with the world fading away outside. I'm so glad you've joined me here. Take a slow, deep breath. Let your shoulders drop. Maybe pull the covers up a bit higher and feel the day gently slip away. The Grande Maison de Couture Duval in Paris was the perfect stage for tragedy. Elegant Art Deco halls gleamed under crystal chandeliers, every model and designer playing their role in the world of haute couture. Then Madame Elise Duval, the visionary couturière, was found dead amid the silks and sequins of her rehearsal runway. Her body lay crumpled on the polished stage, a champagne flute shattered beside her, a foam at her lips suggesting poison. The police saw a tragic accident, perhaps tainted wine from a rival. But Hercule Poirot saw a performance. Someone in this theatre of glamour was playing the role of innocent, the role of murderer. The curtain rises. Chapter 1. The stage is set. In the spring of 1938, the Maison de Couture Duval stood as a jewel of Parisian elegance. Its facade shimmered with geometric marble patterns, cold and smooth under gloved fingers. Inside, the air was rich with expensive Chanel perfume, blended with the sweet scent of fresh hothouse roses in crystal vases. Velvet curtains rustled softly as models passed, their silk gowns whispering against the gleaming floors. Hercule Poirot arrived that afternoon, invited by an old acquaintance in fashion circles. Fate, however, had rewritten the invitation into a summons for murder. He tilted his egg-shaped head, green eyes gleaming with quiet intensity. The little Belgian smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his immaculate sleeve, his magnificent moustache twitching thoughtfully. "Mon ami," he murmured to the inspector, "this is no accident. The stage is set for murder, most theatrical." Madame Elise Duval lay center stage on the rehearsal runway, her black silk evening gown fanned out like a fallen curtain. Scattered sketches and fabric bolts framed her like abandoned props. The chill of the marble floor contrasted the warmth from a nearby fireplace where logs crackled softly. A faint, bitter taste of dry champagne lingered in the air from overturned flutes, while cigar smoke drifted in from her husband's private office. Poirot knelt beside the body, examining the shattered crystal. The foam on her lips carried a sharp, medicinal edge. "Observe, this was her final prop," he said. "But who poured the poison? Who directed this fatal scene?" The inspector shrugged, insisting on a simple mishap. Poirot's little grey cells, however, stirred. He saw psychology at work, not chance. Now, the cast assembled. Jacques Duval, the husband and business manager, played grieving widower with practiced restraint. He paced the salon in rough tweed, the texture rough against smooth leather armchairs. His sandalwood cologne mingled with furniture wax on mahogany tables, heavy in the warm air. Sophie Laurent, the star model, held poses even in sorrow, her silk dress rustling like secrets. She dabbed dry eyes with a crisp linen handkerchief. Lilies from a sympathy bouquet perfumed the room, meanwhile rain tapped gently on tall windows, cooling the terrace beyond. Pierre Moreau, the young assistant designer, hovered near the ateliers. His hands arranged fabrics with unnatural calm as he performed shock, eyes wide, voice steady. The grandfather clock chimed solemnly. Hot continental coffee steamed in nearby cups, its strong aroma cutting through the tension. Vivienne Roux, the wealthy investor, sipped icy champagne, kid gloves soft against the crystal stem. She played the supportive colleague, yet her gaze slid away from the body. The fire's warmth fought the chill night air seeping through cracks, while distant piano music drifted like a forgotten melody. Marie Duval, the sister-in-law, bustled about, offering help, her quick footsteps echoing on parquet. Her smile seemed rehearsed, her helpfulness too eager. Wood smoke curled from the hearth, blending with sweet liqueur on a side table. "Watch this performance carefully, mon ami," Poirot said softly. "Is it truth or theatre?" He drew the group together like a director calling his troupe. "Mesdames et messieurs, Hercule Poirot will direct this investigation. We shall see who forgets their lines." Jacques approached first, cigar trailing smoke. "Poirot, this is madness." Elise simply collapsed. Bad champagne, perhaps. His grip on the glass remained steady. Cold marble chilled the soles of their shoes. The mask slips. Did you catch it? In his eyes, grief performed as shock, yet no tears gathered. Sophie fluttered closer, perfume overwhelming. "She was like a mother to me," she said, voice artfully trembling. Her posture stayed too perfect. Gown unruffled. Too perfect. Too rehearsed. Truth stumbles. Lies flow smooth. Pierre nodded solemnly, folding silk with calm precision. The chandelier tinkled overhead, stirred by a draught. "You watch with Poirot, no? You see how this one's hands do not tremble at all. That is the tell." Vivienne laughed nervously, twisting her gloves. Investors come and go, but this tragic. Rain drummed a steady rhythm on the glass. The careful observer, and you are becoming careful, mon ami, will notice Marie's averted gaze as she poured coffee, precise and unflinching. Poirot arranged objects on a table symmetrically, small hands gesturing expressively. The psychology. It is everything. Each of you plays a role. Ask yourself, why does she avoid his eyes? Jacques and Sophie exchanged a fleeting glance, quickly broken. Consider the psychology. What role does this person need to play? Pierre needed loyalty, yet ambition scented the air like hidden cologne. If you were hiding guilt, how would you perform innocence? With helpful smiles, perhaps, like Marie. The tension rises. Someone will break character soon. Poirot turned his director method on Jacques. The performance. He weeps, yes. The handkerchief dabs, shoulders shake appropriately. The tell, but the handkerchief stays dry. Eyes show no redness. Grief is technically perfect, too perfect. The psychology. I recall the Styles case, where a husband performed devastation so convincingly that even I wavered for a moment. He rehearsed sobs, timed each breath, but he ate a full breakfast soon after. A grieving man has no appetite. The body knows truth, even when the face lies. The truth. Therefore, this man anticipated the death. His grief is costume, not feeling. You see it now, no? On the stage was set. The actors had taken their places. Let the drama begin. Chapter 2. Enter the players. The Grande Maison de Couture, Duval in Paris, was the perfect stage for tragedy. Elegant Art Deco halls gleamed under crystal chandeliers, every model and designer playing their role in the world of haute couture. Then, Madame Elise Duval, the visionary couturière, was found dead amid the silks and sequins of her rehearsal runway. Her body lay crumpled on the polished stage, a champagne flute shattered beside her, foam at her lips, suggesting poison. The police saw a tragic accident, perhaps tainted champagne from a rival. But Hercule Poirot saw a performance. Someone in this theater of glamour was playing the role of innocent, the role of murderer. The curtain rises. Sound effect. Champagne cork popping sharply. and then silence. Hercule Poirot gathered the cast in the opulent main salon that evening. Velvet curtains framed tall windows, where rain tapped insistently against the glass. The air carried lingering traces of Cuban cigar smoke, mixed with the delicate perfume of fresh lilies arranged in tall crystal vases. Footsteps echoed softly on the parquet floor as each suspect took their assigned place. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed 8 times, its deep tone underscoring the tension like an unseen prompter. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot announced, touching his magnificent moustache thoughtfully. We now begin the scenes. Each of you will perform your version of the truth, or your version of the lie. Hercule Poirot will watch. Jacques Duval went first. He sat heavily in a deep leather armchair, its surface cool and supple under his palms. His rough tweed jacket contrasted sharply with the polished mahogany side tables. Elise and I were true partners, he declared, voice measured. Last night, we celebrated the new collection. Nothing more. The strong aroma of continental coffee rose from the cup he held, steam curling upward in the warm room. But Poirot observed closely. Monsieur, there was raised voices heard after midnight. An argument, no? Jacques denied it firmly, yet his fingers tightened around the porcelain until it creaked faintly. The fire crackled in the grate, sending bursts of warmth against the chill seeping from the terrace doors. Watch this performance carefully, mon ami. Is it truth or theater? Notice how the denial comes too quickly, too smoothly. Sophie Laurent entered next, gliding like she was still on the runway. Her silk evening gown rustled softly with every step, catching the light from the tinkling chandelier. She perched on the edge of a velvet stool, posture perfect. Madame Duval was everything to me. Mentor, almost a mother, she said, dabbing at dry eyes with a crisp linen handkerchief. I would never wish her harm. Poirot tilted his egg-shaped head. And yet, mademoiselle, ambition burns brightly in your eyes. Jealousy is a powerful spotlight. Sophie gave a small, artistic laugh, but it rang slightly false against the rain's steady drumming. The mask slips. Did you catch it? For one fraction of a second, her smile faltered. Pierre Moreau followed, standing rather than sitting, as though ready to flee to the ateliers at any moment. His tweed jacket was rough against the smooth crystal tumbler of water he held. I was her most loyal assistant, he stated. I lived for her designs. The scent of furniture wax clung to the nearby desk, where fabric swatches still lay. Yet several of your private sketches bear remarkable resemblance to her latest line, Poirot remarked gently. Pierre's answer came swiftly, too swiftly. Coincidence. Inspiration flows both ways. The clock ticked onward, marking the tiny hesitation before the reply. This actor plays loyalty, but observe the eyes. Where is the moisture of genuine sorrow? Dry, perfectly dry. Vivienne Roux took her turn with the poise of old money. She remained standing, kid gloves soft as she toyed with the stem of an icy champagne flute. As an investor, I supported Elisa's genius unconditionally, she said. Any disagreements were purely professional. The bubbles rose slowly in her glass, popping with tiny sounds. But professional disagreements can become very personal when large sums are involved, no? Poirot suggested. Vivienne's laugh was light, perhaps too light. Wood smoke drifted from the dying fire, blending with her subtle Worth perfume. Too perfect, too rehearsed. Truth stumbles, lies flow smooth. Last came Marie Duval, sister-in-law, bustling forward with a tray of fresh coffee, as though this were an ordinary evening. Her movements were quick, efficient. "Family must stick together in tragedy," she declared, pouring with steady hands. The hot liquid sent up fragrant steam that momentarily clouded her face. Poirot's green eyes gleamed. "Madame, your helpfulness is most admirable. And yet the will leaves you a surprisingly small portion compared to others." Marie protested at once, cheeks flushing. "I never expected more. Never." A single drop of coffee spilled onto the crisp linen napkin she held. Her first small mistake. "You watch with Poirot, no? You see how this one's hands tremble now. Just a little. Ah, but you see, Poirot reads too much into small gestures. Bear with me, mon ami. The careful observer, and you are becoming careful, will notice how Jacques and Sophie carefully avoid looking directly at one another. Ask yourself, why does she avoid his eyes? What secret glance passed between them earlier? Consider the psychology. What role does each person need to play right now? Jacques needs to appear devastated, yet composed. Sophie needs to appear devoted, yet innocent. Pierre needs to appear loyal, yet unthreatening. Vivienne needs to appear detached, yet supportive. Marie needs to appear selfless, yet harmless. If you were hiding guilt, how would you perform innocence? Perhaps with too much helpfulness, or with too much calm. The tension rises. Someone will break character soon. Poirot arranged his small notebook and pen symmetrically on the low table before him. "Order and method," he murmured. "These things expose even the most carefully rehearsed performances." In the course of the interviews, a small folded letter had slipped from Sophie's evening bag and been swiftly retrieved. "Nothing of importance," she said quickly. But Poirot had glimpsed the seal, an intimate seal. The Pierre's alibi of working alone in the atelier was contradicted by a night watchman who remembered seeing him near the service stairs at the critical time. "A simple mistake," Pierre insisted. Vivienne admitted to a late financial meeting with Elise, but the times did not quite align with other accounts. Marie had been the last person to handle the champagne tray before the final toast. Jacques revealed, reluctantly, that Elise had spoken of changing her will only days earlier. Every actor had taken the stage, every line had been delivered, but who had spoken truth? And who had spoken murder? The players had entered, but who performed truth? And who performed lies? Chapter 3. The First Act. The Grande Maison de Couture, Duval in Paris, was the perfect stage for tragedy. Elegant Art Deco halls gleamed under crystal chandeliers, every model and designer playing their role in the world of haute couture. Then, Madame Elise Duval, the visionary couturière, was found dead amid the silks and sequins of her rehearsal runway. Her body lay crumpled on the polished stage, a champagne flute shattered beside her, foam at her lips suggesting poison. The police saw a tragic accident, perhaps tainted champagne from a rival. But Hercule Poirot saw a performance. Someone in this theater of glamour was playing the role of innocent, the role of murderer. The curtain rises. Sound effect, grandfather clock, chiming slowly, 3 solemn notes. The next morning, Poirot moved deeper into the private ateliers behind the Grand Salon. Bolts of silk and satin lay half unrolled across wide mahogany tables, their surfaces polished to a high sheen with furniture wax. The faint scent of hothouse roses still clung to the air, now mingling with the sharper smell of old paper and ink from Elisa's personal files. Footsteps echoed on the cold marble counters where sketches had been pinned only hours before the tragedy. Rain continued to drum against the tall windows, cooling the otherwise warm room. Mon Dieu, Poirot murmured, adjusting his moustache with precision. The first act now truly begins. We move behind the footlights. He opened a locked drawer in Elise's rosewood desk. Inside lay a slim, leather-bound ledger and several sealed envelopes. One envelope bore a broken wax seal, the same intimate seal he had glimpsed slipping from Sophie Laurent's bag the night before. Poirot unfolded the single sheet inside. The handwriting was elegant but hurried. We cannot continue like this, she suspects. Meet me after the toast. P. Poirot's green eyes gleamed. Ah, a missed cue at last. In the main salon, Jacques Duval sat alone, staring at the empty runway stage. Cigar smoke curled lazily from the ashtray beside him. The Cuban tobacco's rich aroma filled the warm space near the fireplace. Poirot approached quietly. Monsieur Duval, you knew of this letter. Jacques stiffened. I knew nothing of any letter. Yet your wife confided many things to you. Financial troubles, changing the will, and perhaps an indiscretion between her star model and her brilliant assistant. Jacques' hand trembled very slightly as he reached for his cigar. The tell was small, but unmistakable. Watch this performance carefully, mon ami. Is it truth or theatre? The hand that shook held the cigar. Yet yesterday it poured champagne without a ripple. And Sophie Laurent appeared at the doorway, silk robe rustling softly. She had clearly overheard. That letter means nothing, she said quickly. It was only about a design dispute. Poirot turned slowly toward her. Mademoiselle, your feet remain perfectly still, no nervous shifting, yet your voice has risen half a tone. The performance of calm is cracking. The mask slips. Did you catch it? One heartbeat when her eyes flicked to Pierre Moreau, who had just entered from the atelier corridor. Pierre froze mid-step. His tweed jacket hung a little looser this morning. The rough fabric seemed to carry the weight of the night's revelations. I was working late, he repeated. Nothing more. Poirot's director method focused now on Sophie. The performance, she flutters, yes, eyelashes bat in distress, voice quavers most artfully. On the tell but observe, the feet remain planted like roots. No true anxiety shifts the balance. The performance of fear is staged, controlled, too controlled. The psychology. I am reminded of the Orient Express affair. A certain lady performed injured innocence with such exquisite poise that for a moment even Hercule Poirot hesitated. She had rehearsed every pause, every tearful glance in a hand mirror. But in one unguarded second, when she believed herself alone, she smiled, a small, satisfied curve of the lips. Guilt cannot entirely suppress joy at a plan succeeded. The muscles remember what the mind tries to forget. This is the gift of psychology, to see the twitch that never rehearses, the truth. Therefore, mademoiselle, you hide not fear of discovery, but fear of losing what you have gained through deception. You see it now, no? The first mask cracks. Vivienne Roux entered next, still wearing her kid gloves, though she twisted them unconsciously now. I was in the financial office reviewing accounts, she stated. But a night porter had seen her near the champagne service tray at 11:45. Far later than she claimed. Too perfect. Too rehearsed. Truth stumbles. Lies flow smooth. Marie Duval bustled in, carrying fresh linen napkins, as though normal domestic routine could restore order. Yet when Poirot mentioned the small inheritance she would receive, her hands paused, only for a second, before resuming their folding. This actor plays helpfulness, but observe the eyes. Where is the moisture of true sorrow? Dry still. You watch with Poirot, no? You see how Pierre's fingers tighten on the bolt of silk he pretends to examine. Ah, but you say, Poirot reads too much into small gestures. Bear with me a little longer. The careful observer, and you are becoming careful, mon ami, will notice Jacques staring too long at the shattered flute still lying on the runway, as though measuring exactly how it fell. Ask yourself, why does Sophie avoid Pierre's gaze now, when last night their eyes met so briefly? Consider the psychology. What role does each suspect need to play at this moment? Jacques needs control. Sophie needs devotion. Pierre needs loyalty. Vivienne needs detachment. Marie needs selflessness. If you were hiding guilt, how would you perform innocence? Perhaps by continuing to fold napkins, or by staring too intently at broken glass. The tension rises. Someone will break character soon. Poirot stood in the center of the salon and spoke softly to the empty stage. In every theater of crime, humans wear masks. Here in the world of haute couture, the masks are especially beautiful, tailored, sequined, perfectly fitted. But why do we wear them? Fear, most often. Fear of judgment, fear of loss, fear of being seen as we truly are. Greed dresses itself as ambition. Guilt parades as righteous anger. Love sometimes wears the costume of indifference. Society applauds the performance. It rarely questions the actor. I recall another case, the Blue Train Mystery. A woman of society performed effortless elegance so flawlessly that no one suspected her of anything more sinister than good taste. She laughed lightly, gestured gracefully, never raised her voice. But in a quiet compartment, when she thought herself unobserved, her fingers clutched a necklace until the knuckles turned white. A genuine lady wears jewels as ornaments. A thief grips them as lifelines. The body cannot lie forever. Psychology teaches us that no mask is seamless. Sooner or later, light finds the crack. And so it is here. Deception requires constant energy. Truth requires none. The actor tires, the audience waits. Eventually, someone forgets their lines. Theatrical wisdom for you, mon ami. Do not watch only the face. Watch the hands. They speak when lips lie. The first act concluded. Some masks had cracked. Chapter 4. Rehearsed Lines. The Grande Maison de Couture. Duval in Paris was the perfect stage for tragedy. Elegant Art Deco halls gleamed under crystal chandeliers, every model and designer playing their role in the world of haute couture. Then, Madame Elise Duval, the visionary couturière, was found dead amid the silks and sequins of her rehearsal runway. Her body lay crumpled on the polished stage, a champagne flute shattered beside her, foam at her lips, suggesting poison. The police saw a tragic accident, perhaps tainted champagne from a rival. But Hercule Poirot saw a performance. Someone in this theater of glamour was playing the role of innocent, the role of murderer. The curtain rises. Sound effect, silk fabric sliding slowly across a polished table. By late afternoon, the atmosphere in the maison had thickened like overstarched taffeta. Poirot summoned each suspect back to the main salon one by one, turning the velvet-draped room into an interrogation stage. The fire still crackled warmly in the grate, but the chill from the rain-lashed terrace seemed to creep under every door. Our fresh hothouse roses had been replaced that morning. Their heavy perfume now fought the lingering Cuban cigar smoke and the faint medicinal bitterness that still clung to memory. Jacques Duval entered first. He no longer paced. He sat rigidly in the same deep leather armchair, its surface now warm from prolonged contact. Poirot stood before him, small hands clasped behind his back. Monsieur, your alibi places you in this very room at the time the champagne was served. Yet the night porter saw you descending the service stairs at 11:40. Explain. Jacques exhaled sharply, a plume of cigar smoke rising. I went to fetch more ice, that is all. Yet no ice was needed. The buckets were full. Poirot tilted his head. The script falters, no? Jacques' jaw tightened, and the grandfather clock chimed 4 times, each note seeming to strike the man's composure. Watch this performance carefully, mon ami. Is it truth or theatre? The denial is still smooth, but the cigar trembles now between his fingers. Sophie Laurent was next. She arrived in a simple day dress of dove-grey silk that rustled less dramatically than her evening gowns. Yet the sound still carried in the quiet room like a whispered secret. Poirot held up the letter she had dropped the previous evening. This speaks of a rendezvous after the toast with Pierre Moreau. You said it concerned designs, yet the words are intimate. Sophie's chin lifted. We were close. That does not make me a murderer. Close enough to hide the truth from Hercule Poirot? He stepped closer. You poured the champagne for Madame Duval yourself at the final toast. Her hands, resting in her lap, clenched once, then relaxed with visible effort. The chandelier above tinkled faintly as a draught moved through the room. The mask slips. Did you catch it? The knuckles whitened for 1 second before she forced them open. Pierre Moreau followed, shoulders squared, as though bracing for a fitting. His tweed jacket was the same one he had worn for days. The rough fabric now looked almost accusing. Poirot laid several preliminary sketches on the low mahogany table. Sketches unmistakably in Pierre's hand, yet bearing Elise's signature corrections in red ink. These are yours, stolen ideas, presented as hers. She discovered this. No, Pierre's voice remained level. Yet creative borrowing happens in every atelier. Borrowing that would ruin a career when exposed. Poirot arranged the sketches symmetrically. You handle the tray of champagne flutes just before the toast. Your fingerprints are on her glass. Pierre blinked once, slowly. Too slowly. This actor plays calm, but observe the throat. The pulse flutters beneath the collar. Vivienne Roux entered with deliberate grace, kid gloves still on, though she no longer toyed with them. She accepted a glass of icy champagne from the side table, dry and sharp on the tongue. You argued with Elise over money the afternoon before her death, Poirot said. A large loan she refused to extend. You were seen near the service pantry afterward. Vivienne sipped, lips barely touching the crystal. Business discussions can become heated, but that is not murder. Yet you lingered near the champagne trays. Poirot's green eyes held hers, and your financial ledgers show payments to a discreet chemist last month. For the first time, her composure wavered. The champagne glass tilted. A single drop slid down the stem and onto her glove. Too perfect, too rehearsed. Truth stumbles. Lies flow smooth, no longer quite so smooth. Marie Duval was last. She bustled in carrying a tray of fresh linen napkins, as though normalcy could be restored through domestic routine. Poirot stopped her before she could set the tray down. Madame, you burned several letters in the small fireplace of the atelier 2 nights ago. Letters expressing long-standing resentment toward your sister-in-law. Marie froze. Personal correspondence. Nothing more. Personal enough to destroy. Poirot stepped forward. And you were the one who carried the tray of champagne to the runway, just before the final toast. Her hands shook, visibly now. A napkin slipped to the parquet floor. You watch with Poirot, no? You see how this one's hands tremble at last. Ah, but you say, Poirot reads too much into small gestures. Bear with me, mon ami. The gestures are growing louder. The careful observer, and you are becoming careful, will notice Jacques staring at the floor where the napkin fell, as though measuring distances. Ask yourself, why does Sophie now look at Pierre with something close to fear instead of affection? Consider the psychology. What role does each suspect cling to most desperately now? Jacques clings to control, Sophie to devotion, Pierre to loyalty, Vivienne to detachment, Marie to selflessness. If you were hiding guilt, how would you perform innocence when the script begins to tear? Perhaps by continuing old habits, folding napkins, pouring coffee, staring at broken glass. Long after the habit has become meaningless, the tension rises. The rehearsed lines are faltering one by one. Poirot moved to the center of the room and addressed the empty runway stage as though the murdered woman could still hear him. Truth requires no rehearsal. Lies must be practiced again and again. But practice fatigues the actor. The memory slips, the gesture betrays, and so the performance crumbles, not with a crash, but with tiny accumulating fractures. He turned back to the silent group. Rehearsed lines can deceive for a time, but they cannot deceive forever. Rehearsed lines began to falter. Truth needed no rehearsal. The chapter 5, The Mask Slips. The Grande Maison de Couture Duval in Paris was the perfect stage for tragedy. Elegant Art Deco halls gleamed under crystal chandeliers, every model and designer playing their role in the world of haute couture. Then Madame Elise Duval, the visionary couturière, was found dead amid the silks and sequins of her rehearsal runway. Her body lay crumpled on the polished stage, a champagne flute shattered beside her, foam at her lips suggesting poison. The police saw a tragic accident, perhaps tainted champagne from a rival, but Hercule Poirot saw a performance. Someone in this theater of glamour was playing the role of innocent, the role of murderer. The curtain rises. Sound effect. A single champagne glass falling and shattering in slow motion. That evening, Poirot gathered every suspect once more in the main salon. The fire burned low now, casting long shadows across the parquet. The scent of dying roses mingled with the last traces of cigar smoke and the sharp medicinal ghost that still haunted the room. Velvet curtains had been drawn against the rain. The only sound was the soft crackle of logs and the occasional distant chime of the grandfather clock. Poirot stood in the center like a director before the final dress rehearsal. His small hands were clasped behind his back, green eyes moving slowly from face to face. Mesdames et messieurs, he began quietly, the performances have grown strained. The lines are fraying. Tonight we reach the moment when at least one mask must fall completely. He turned first to Sophie Laurent. She stood near the runway, arms folded tightly across her silk blouse, as though holding herself together. Mademoiselle, you loved Pierre Moreau. Madame Duval discovered this. She threatened to end your career, to expose the affair and the stolen designs. You poured her champagne that night. Sophie's chin trembled. I only wanted her to understand. I never. Her voice broke. For the first time, the tears were real. They spilled freely, ruining the perfect maquillage she had so carefully reapplied that morning. She sank onto the nearest velvet stool, shoulders shaking. The mask slips. Did you catch it? No more artful dabbing with a dry handkerchief. Real grief, real fear, real remorse. Pierre Moreau stepped forward instinctively, hand outstretched, then froze as Poirot raised one small palm. Non, monsieur. Not yet. Poirot's director method focused now on Pierre. The performance. He defends, yes. The voice rises in passionate denial, and the fists clench for dramatic emphasis. The tell. But observe. The eyes keep darting to Sophie, not in anger, not in fear, in desperate, helpless longing. A truly outraged innocent would look only at his accuser. This man looks at his love. The performance of loyalty fractures under the weight of real feeling. The psychology. I recall the death on the Nile tragedy. A man performed devoted friendship so convincingly that even those closest to him believed it, until the final moment when he reached for his lover's hand instead of his weapon. Love cannot rehearse its pull. It draws the body like gravity, even when the mind screams to resist. Guilt may twist affection into avoidance, but here we see the opposite. Affection betrays the guilt. The heart refuses the script. The truth. Therefore, monsieur, you poisoned the champagne not from hatred, but from panic. Elise would have destroyed both your careers and your future together. You see it now, no? The mask is falling. Pierre made a small, strangled sound. His knees buckled. He caught himself on the edge of the mahogany table. The sketches scattered like fallen leaves. I didn't want her to die, he whispered. I only wanted time. More time. His voice cracked completely. The rough tweed jacket seemed suddenly too large for the man inside it. Tears, unrehearsed, unashamed, ran down his cheeks. This actor plays grief, but observe the eyes. Where is the moisture? There at last. Real, raw, undeniable. Sophie rose, crossed to him, and took his hand. No more hiding. No more averted glances. Their fingers intertwined like two threads finely knotted together. Jacques Duval watched in silence, a face pale. The cigar he had been holding dropped forgotten into the ashtray. A thin thread of smoke rose like a final curtain. Vivienne Roux removed her kid gloves slowly, one finger at a time. I hated her, she said quietly, but I never poisoned anyone. Marie Duval covered her mouth with a trembling hand. I burned the letters because I was ashamed, not because I killed her. Poirot nodded once. Mes amis, the masks are slipping one by one, some from guilt, some from relief, some from simple human pain. He stepped closer to Pierre. You handled the glass, calmly, too calmly, because you already knew what was inside. An innocent man hesitates to touch what may be cursed. A guilty man handles it with the familiarity of the craftsman who made it deadly. Pierre looked up, eyes red. I thought, if she was gone, if Sophie and I could start again, I thought it would be clean. Sophie sobbed once, a sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her chest. Too perfect, too rehearsed. Truth stumbles. Lies flow smooth, no longer. Truth rushes out now, messy and unstoppable. You watch with Poirot, no? You see how this one's hands tremble, not from fear of discovery, but from the weight of what he has done. Ah, but you say, Poirot reads too much into small gestures. No, mon ami. The gestures are screaming now. The careful observer, and you are becoming very careful, will notice the relief that flickers across Jacques' and Vivienne's faces. Not triumph, simply the lifting of false suspicion. Ask yourself, why does Sophie cling to Pierre now, when only hours ago she feared him? Consider the psychology. What role does a person need to play when guilt becomes too heavy to carry alone? The role of the broken human being. No more masks, only the truth beneath. If you were hiding guilt, how would you perform innocence when the curtain is about to fall? You would cling to the last shred of composure until it tears. The tension that has been rising for days now reaches its peak. Someone has broken character completely. The spotlight of truth is shining, and it falls mercilessly on Pierre Moreau. The mask had fallen. Beneath it, the true face at last. Chapter 6. Behind the Curtain. The Grande Maison de Couture Duval in Paris was the perfect stage for tragedy. Elegant Art Deco halls gleamed under crystal chandeliers, every model and designer playing their role in the world of haute couture. Then Madame Elise Duval, the visionary couturière, he was found dead amid the silks and sequins of her rehearsal runway. Her body lay crumpled on the polished stage. A champagne flute shattered beside her, foam at her lips, suggesting poison. The police saw a tragic accident, perhaps tainted champagne from a rival. But Hercule Poirot saw a performance. Someone in this theater of glamour was playing the role of innocent, the role of murderer. The curtain rises. Sound effect. Velvet curtains being slowly drawn back with a soft, heavy rustle. With Pierre Moreau now in custody and the immediate storm of accusation past, Poirot turned his attention to the hidden drawers, locked cabinets, and forgotten corners of the maison. The ateliers felt strangely quiet now. Bolts of silk lay untouched, their rich colors muted in the late afternoon light filtering through rain-streaked windows. The scent of dying roses had given way to the drier smell of old paper, leather bindings, and the faint trace of furniture wax on mahogany desks. Cold marble surfaces still held the chill of the night before. Poirot opened Elise's private journal, bound in soft kid leather, its pages crisp with age. The entries revealed a woman who had built an empire, but trusted almost no one completely. Jacques has been borrowing against the house without my knowledge. One page read, Vivian presses for repayment of old loans I thought forgiven. Pierre's ambition grows dangerous. Sophie's loyalty is paper thin. Marie resents every success I achieve. He closed the journal gently and moved to the small safe behind a false panel in the wall. Inside lay bank statements, private correspondence, not a single vial, empty now, of a colorless liquid labeled only with a chemist's mark. Behind every curtain, Poirot murmured, a secret waits. Jacques Duval sat alone in his office when Poirot entered. The cigar was unlit, the ashtray empty for the first time in days. The sandalwood cologne he usually wore seemed fainter, almost apologetic. You knew of Pierre and Sophie, Poirot said without preamble. You knew Elise planned to expose them and to change the will in favor of a foundation rather than family. Jacques nodded slowly. I argued with her the night before. I begged her not to destroy the young ones. She laughed, said ambition should be earned, not stolen. His voice cracked on the last word. For the first time, the grief appeared genuine. No performance, only exhaustion. And Sophie Laurent and Pierre had been allowed one supervised meeting in a small side room before his transfer to the police. Poirot observed through the half-open door. Sophie clung to Pierre's hand. No silk gown now, only a simple wool dress. Pierre's tweed jacket hung loosely on his frame. I never wanted this, Sophie whispered. I only wanted us to be free of her shadow. Pierre bowed his head. I thought poison would be quick, clean. I was wrong. Their fingers remained entwined. Two people who had worn masks of devotion and ambition until the masks became cages. Vivienne Rue stood on the terrace, despite the lingering drizzle. She had removed her gloves. Her bare hands rested on the cold marble balustrade. Poirot joined her. "You sabotaged her last collection," he said quietly. "Small alterations to patterns, whispers to suppliers, and revenge for a loan she called in years ago." Vivienne did not turn. "She ruined me once. I wanted her to feel it. But murder, no. I only wanted her humbled." A single tear, real, uncalculated, slid down her cheek and fell onto the wet stone. Marie Duval was in the atelier, sorting through old fabric swatches. Her movements were slower now, less brisk. Poirot found a small pile of charred paper edges in the grate nearby. "You burned your own letters of complaint," he observed. "Years of resentment. She takes credit for everything. The house should be mine by right." Marie looked up, eyes red-rimmed. "I hated her control. But family is family. I never would have. I couldn't." She sank onto a stool. The crisp linen napkin she had been holding fell to the floor, unfolded, forgotten. "Watch this performance carefully, mon ami. And no more careful folding. No more helpful bustle. Only human beings left behind the curtain." The mask slips. Did you catch it? Jacques' hand, reaching instinctively toward an unlit cigar, then stopping, as though even that small comfort now felt dishonest. This actor plays grief, but observe the eyes. Where is the moisture? There at last, in almost every face. Not rehearsed tears, simply the release of pressure, long held. Too perfect, too rehearsed. Truth stumbles. Lies flow smooth, no longer flowing at all. You watch with Poirot, no? You see how Pierre's shoulders have dropped, how Sophie no longer stands like a model on parade. Ah, but you say, Poirot reads too much into small gestures. No longer, mon ami. The gestures speak plainly now, and the careful observer, and you are becoming very careful, will notice Vivienne's ungloved hands resting quietly, no longer twisting in anxiety. Ask yourself, why does Marie no longer hurry to offer coffee or napkins? Consider the psychology. Behind the performance, every human being hides a motive born of pain, fear, or need. Love twists into possession. Loyalty curdles into resentment. Ambition dresses itself in devotion until the costume chokes. If you were hiding guilt, how long could you keep the curtain closed before the weight of the fabric tore it down? The tension that once rose like a tightening string has now loosened. The actors no longer play roles. They simply exist. Poirot stood once more in the center of the empty runway stage. The shattered flute had been removed, but a single shard still glittered in a crack between the parquet boards. "In every theater," he said softly to the silence, "there is a backstage where the masks are removed, the costumes hung, the makeup wiped away. Here we have seen it. Greed wore the costume of business sense. Jealousy wore the gown of loyalty. Fear wore the gloves of helpfulness. But backstage, the truth is plain. Every secret carried a motive, and every motive carried a cost." I recall the case of the ABC killer. A man hid behind the mask of an ordinary, unremarkable life. Clerk, neighbor, harmless. Yet behind that curtain lay a childhood wound so deep it compelled him to taunt the police with letters, to leave clues like a playwright, leaving his signature. Motive was everything. Without it, no curtain would have been drawn, no performance begun. Psychology teaches us that no secret stays buried forever. It festers, it pushes, until the fabric splits and the audience sees. And so it is here. Behind every curtain, a secret. Behind every secret, a motive. Chapter 7. The Final Act. The Grande Maison de Couture Duval in Paris was the perfect stage for tragedy. Elegant Art Deco halls gleamed under crystal chandeliers, every model and designer playing their role in the world of haute couture. Then Madame Elise Duval, the visionary couturière, was found dead amid the silks and sequins of her rehearsal runway. Her body lay crumpled on the polished stage, a champagne flute shattered beside her, foam at her lips suggesting poison. The police saw a tragic accident, perhaps tainted champagne from a rival. But Hercule Poirot saw a performance. But someone in this theater of glamour was playing the role of innocent, the role of murderer. The curtain rises. Sound effect, slow, deliberate footsteps crossing an empty stage, followed by the soft, metallic click of spotlights turning on one by one. The entire cast had been summoned back to the main salon one final time. The velvet curtains were drawn wide, revealing the tall windows streaked with the last light of a rainy Paris evening. The fire had been built up again. Its warmth battled the chill that still seemed to cling to the marble floors. Fresh lilies had been removed. Only the faint perfume of dying roses lingered now, mixed with the dry scent of old paper and the ghost of Cuban cigar smoke. Hercule Poirot stood at the center of the runway stage itself, small but commanding, it like a director addressing his company on opening night. His green eyes moved slowly across each face. Jacques Duval sat rigid in a leather armchair. Sophie Laurent stood beside Pierre Moreau, whose wrists were lightly bound, yet who still held his head up. Vivienne Roux leaned against a mahogany column, kid gloves finally discarded on a side table. Marie Duval sat on the edge of a velvet stool, hands folded tightly in her lap. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began in his quiet, precise voice. You have each performed for Hercule Poirot. Some truthfully, some not. The time has come to review the performances. Let us lower the house lights and raise the spotlight of truth. He turned first to Jacques Duval. Jacques, you played the grieving widower with admirable restraint, the steady hand, the measured voice, and the appropriate dabbing of dry eyes. But a man truly shocked does not pour champagne without the slightest tremor. You knew of the death before it was announced, because you had already guessed what Pierre intended. Jacques closed his eyes for one long moment. No protest came. Poirot moved to Sophie. Sophie, you performed the devoted protégée, the loyal daughter figure. Tears on cue, trembling lip, fluttering handkerchief. Magnifique. But loyalty does not whisper secret rendezvous after the toast. Loyalty does not help conceal stolen designs. Your grief was real, yet it came too late. Sophie bowed her head. A single tear fell onto the parquet. Vivienne, Poirot continued, you played the cool, supportive investor, detached, professional. Champagne glass always steady. But supporters do not tamper with patterns, and do not whisper to suppliers, do not linger near poison trays out of business interest. Your mask of indifference hid a very personal revenge. Vivienne gave the smallest nod, as though acknowledging a well-aimed critique. Marie, you gave the performance of the selfless sister-in-law, helpful and busy, always offering coffee, napkins, comfort. But helpfulness does not burn resentful letters in secret fireplaces. Helpfulness does not watch a hated rival die without the smallest flicker of satisfaction in the eyes. Marie pressed a hand to her mouth. No sound escaped. Poirot turned at last to Pierre Moreau. And so we come to our leading performer. Pierre looked up. His tweed jacket was creased, his face pale, yet something in his posture had straightened, as though relief and dread had met in the middle. You, Pierre. He gave the most convincing performance of all. The shocked assistant, the helpful colleague running to fetch doctors, to comfort Sophie, to organize the chaos. Outrage, cooperation, magnifique, bravo. But you made one small, fatal error. One moment when the mask slipped completely. He stepped closer. When the champagne tray was brought forward for the final toast, you were the one who handed Madame Duval her glass. Your hand did not tremble, not even a fraction. An innocent man, confronted with sudden tragedy, would hesitate to touch what might be cursed. A guilty man handles the instrument of death with the calm familiarity of one who placed the poison there himself. Pierre's shoulders sagged. You did not kill out of hatred, Poirot said softly. You killed out of panic. Elise had discovered the stolen designs, and she had discovered the affair. She was about to expose both, to ruin your career and Sophie's future in one stroke. Poison seemed efficient, clean, a single fatal toast. A long silence followed. Poirot's director method concluded with Pierre. The performance, he assists. Yes, suggestions offered. Demeanor calm and helpful. The tell, but observe. The utter lack of hesitation when touching the fatal glass. No instinctive recoil, no protective pause. The performance of innocence overcompensates by showing no fear at all. The psychology. In the cards on the table case, a killer played the perfect host. Charming, attentive, unflappable. Yet psychology revealed the thrill behind the calm. The eyes gleamed with unnatural energy. Here, too, the absence of normal human tremor betrays the rehearsed certainty of guilt. The mind may script calmness, and the body cannot fake the absence of instinctive dread. The truth, therefore, Pierre Moreau, you poisoned the champagne to protect ambition and love. The curtain falls on your performance. Poirot made a small, expressive gesture with his hands. The theater of crime has one truth. Every actor eventually forgets their lines. Tonight the lines have been forgotten. The masks have fallen. He looked at each of them in turn. Some of you wore masks of grief, some of loyalty, some of helpfulness, some of detachment. But beneath every mask lay the same human motives: fear, greed, love twisted into possession, ambition dressed as devotion. The police officers waiting in the wings stepped forward. Pierre did not resist, as they led him away. Sophie reached out one last time. Their fingers brushed, then parted. Jacques stood slowly, and as though the weight of years had suddenly settled on him. Vivienne picked up her gloves, looked at them for a long moment, then set them down again. Marie remained seated, staring at her empty hands. Poirot stepped off the runway stage. The final act has concluded. Only truth survives the curtain call. The final act concluded. Only truth survived the curtain call. Chapter 8. Curtain Call. The Grande Maison de Couture Duval in Paris was the perfect stage for tragedy. Elegant Art Deco halls gleamed under crystal chandeliers, every model and designer playing their role in the world of haute couture. Then Madame Elise Duval, the visionary couturière, was found dead amid the silks and sequins of her rehearsal runway. Her body lay crumpled on the polished stage. A champagne flute shattered beside her, foam at her lips suggesting poison. And the police saw a tragic accident, perhaps tainted champagne from a rival. But Hercule Poirot saw a performance. Someone in this theater of glamour was playing the role of innocent, the role of murderer. The curtain rises. Sound effect. slow fading echo of a single pair of footsteps, leaving an empty theater, followed by the soft metallic clunk of house lights dimming completely. The police led Pierre Moreau away just after 10 o'clock that evening. No dramatic struggle, no final outburst, only the quiet click of handcuffs and the shuffle of regulation shoes on the parquet floor. The main salon fell silent, except for the low crackle of the dying fire and the occasional drip of rain from the terrace eaves. The heavy velvet curtains had been drawn back once more, but the windows now showed only black glass and the faint reflection of the room's own lamps. Jacques Duval remained seated long after the others had drifted away. He stared at the empty runway stage where his wife had fallen. The cigar case in his breast pocket stayed closed. For the first time in years, he seemed to have no desire to smoke. When he finally rose, his movements were slow, almost elderly. He paused beside the low mahogany table where the fatal champagne flute had once stood. No glass remained, only a single, tiny shard of crystal, still caught in a crack between the floorboards, glinting like a last stubborn sequin. He bent stiffly, picked up the shard between thumb and forefinger, and held it to the firelight. For a long moment, he studied it. Then he opened his palm and let it fall back into the darkness between the boards. And Sophie Laurent had retreated to one of the smaller fitting rooms. She sat on a low velvet stool before a 3-panel mirror, elbows on her knees, face buried in her hands. The silk blouse she had worn for the final confrontation was creased and tear-stained. No more poses, no more careful angles. When one of the maids timidly knocked to offer tea, Sophie only shook her head without lifting her face. Pierre's last words to her, spoken just before the officers took him, had been very quiet. "I thought I was saving us. I was only destroying us." She had not answered. She had simply held his hand until the last possible second. Vivienne Roux stood alone on the terrace despite the damp night air. She had left her kid gloves behind on the side table in the salon. Small, soft, expensive things that now seemed irrelevant. No raindrops gathered on the marble balustrade and slid slowly down its smooth surface. She watched them fall, one after another, as though counting the seconds it took for each to disappear. When she finally spoke, to no one, her voice was low and flat. She won in the end. Even dead, she won. Marie Duval moved through the ateliers like a ghost performing old habits. She straightened bolts of fabric that no one would touch tonight. She refolded linen napkins that had been abandoned on work tables. She wiped non-existent dust from mahogany surfaces already gleaming with wax. But her hands moved without purpose, without the brisk efficiency that had once defined her. When she reached the small grate where she had burned her resentful letters, she stopped. She knelt. She stared at the cold ashes for a very long time. Then, very gently, she closed the small iron door and turned the latch. Poirot stood near the entrance to the main salon, watching these small private aftermaths unfold. He had not moved since the police departed. His small hands were clasped behind his back. His green eyes reflected the low firelight. He touched his magnificent moustache once, thoughtfully, then let his hand fall. No one spoke to him. No one asked for further explanation. The performance was over. There would be no encores. Eventually Jacques approached him. The older man's voice was hoarse. "Will the house survive this, do you think?" Poirot considered the question for several seconds. "The house will survive, monsieur. Houses always survive. It is the people inside who must decide whether they wish to continue wearing the old costumes, or whether they will finally dress in something closer to truth. Jacques gave the smallest of nods. Then he walked away, slowly, shoulders bowed, toward the private staircase that led to the family apartments. One by one, the others left the salon. Sophie slipped out through a side door, coat pulled tightly around her, head down against the rain. Vivienne collected her gloves at last, slipped them into a handbag without putting them on, and departed without a backward glance. Marie was the last to leave the ateliers. She paused at the doorway, looked back at the silent work tables and the shrouded mannequins, then switched off the last lamp. Darkness swallowed the room. Poirot remained a few minutes longer. As he walked once more to the center of the runway stage, the single remaining crystal shard caught the faint glow from the corridor. He bent, carefully, precisely, and lifted it between thumb and forefinger. He held it up, turning it slowly. Firelight danced inside the fragment like a captured star. Then he placed it gently on the edge of the low mahogany table where so many champagne flutes had stood over the years. He straightened. "Rideau," he murmured to the empty theater. No applause followed, only the soft, final sound of rain on glass, and the distant, melancholy chime of the grandfather clock striking 11. The curtain call came. No applause, only justice. Chapter 9. After the show, the Grande Maison de Couture, Duval, in Paris, was the perfect stage for tragedy. Elegant Art Deco halls gleamed under crystal chandeliers, every model and designer playing their role in the world of haute couture. Then Madame Elise Duval, the visionary couturière, was found dead amid the silks and sequins of her rehearsal runway. Her body lay crumpled on the polished stage, a champagne flute shattered beside her, foam at her lips, suggesting poison. The police saw a tragic accident, perhaps tainted champagne from a rival. But Hercule Poirot saw a performance. Someone in this theater of glamour was playing the role of innocent, the role of murderer. The curtain rises. Sound effect. Soft morning light filtering through tall windows, accompanied by the gentle ticking of a grandfather clock, resuming its steady rhythm. 3 weeks had passed since the final curtain fell. The Maison de Couture Duval reopened its doors quietly, without fanfare or press photographers, and the Art Deco facade still shimmered in the pale spring sunlight. But the marble steps had been scrubbed until they gleamed like new. Inside, the air carried only the clean scent of fresh lilies and furniture wax. No trace remained of Cuban cigar smoke, or the faint medicinal bitterness that once clung to every corner. The main salon had been redecorated in softer tones. The heavy velvet curtains were replaced with lighter silk drapes that allowed more daylight to enter. The runway stage itself had been refinished. Not a single crack remained where a champagne flute had once shattered. Fresh, hothouse roses stood in crystal vases on every low mahogany table, their perfume gentle rather than overpowering. Sophie Laurent returned first. She no longer posed automatically when entering a room. She wore a simple wool coat over a plain day dress. No silk, no sequins. She had been offered a position at a smaller, independent house in Milan. She accepted it the day after Pierre's formal indictment. When she walked through the salon one last time before leaving Paris, she paused at the center of the runway stage. She did not cry. She simply stood there for several minutes, hands loose at her sides, breathing slowly. Then she turned and left, through the side door without looking back. Jacques Duval sold his majority share in the house to a consortium of longtime clients who had admired Elise's vision. He kept only a small apartment above the ateliers for occasional visits. The rough tweed jackets were replaced by softer wool suits. The ever-present cigar case disappeared from his pocket. He began taking long walks along the Seine in the early mornings. Friends reported that he spoke of Elise without bitterness, only with a quiet, surprised respect for the woman he had both loved and resented. One afternoon, he returned to the maison to collect the last of his personal papers. He found Marie in the small office they once shared. She looked up from a ledger, offered a small, genuine smile, and poured him coffee without asking. The cup was hot, the aroma strong and continental. They sat together in silence for nearly half an hour. When he rose to leave, he touched her shoulder once, lightly, and said only, "Thank you for staying." Marie Duval had taken over day-to-day management of the ateliers. She no longer bustled. Her movements were calm, deliberate. She wore practical linen aprons over her dresses and kept her hair pinned simply. The resentful letters were gone. The small fireplace in the back room stayed cold. She hired 2 new assistants, young women with genuine talent but no connections, and began teaching them the techniques Elise had once guarded so jealously. When clients asked about the future of the house, Marie answered simply, "We continue her work, not as imitators, as heirs." Vivienne Roux never returned to the maison in person. She sent a single letter of resignation from her role as investor, along with a bank draft settling the last of the disputed loans. 6 months later, she was seen at a charity gala in Geneva, wearing an understated gown of dove gray silk. No kid gloves, no champagne flute in hand. Those who knew her said she had begun funding smaller, unexperimental designers, ones who reminded her of the young Elise she had once admired before envy took root. The house itself seemed to breathe more easily. Orders for the new season arrived steadily. The mannequins in the display windows wore fresh designs, elegant, structured, unmistakably Duval in spirit, yet lighter in execution. No one spoke of scandal in the salons anymore. The name Elise Duval was mentioned with respect, occasionally with affection. Poirot visited one final time on a crisp April morning. He walked slowly through the reopened rooms, noting every small change. The brighter drapes, the absence of heavy cigar smoke, the quiet confidence in Marie's posture as she greeted him at the door. He paused at the center of the runway stage. No shard of crystal remained, only polished parquet reflecting soft light. He touched his magnificent moustache once, thoughtfully, then spoke to Marie. "The theater has emptied, madame, but the lessons, they remain." Marie nodded. "We are learning to perform without masks. It is harder, but it feels honest." Poirot's green eyes gleamed with quiet satisfaction. He turned his director method one last time, not on a suspect, but on the house itself. The performance? It heals, yes. The rooms breathe again. Voices are lighter. Smiles return without rehearsal. The tell. But observe. No shadows linger in the corners. No hurried footsteps. No averted eyes. The performance of recovery is authentic. The psychology. In the aftermath of Sad Cypress, those left behind performed normalcy for months before true healing began. They wore the old roles until the fabric wore thin. Only when they allowed themselves to feel the grief, on the guilt, the relief, without script, did life resume, here too. The theater renews itself when the actors dare to step out of costume. The truth, therefore, the Maison de Couture Duval will not merely survive, it will live again. You see it now, no? He made a small, expressive gesture toward the sunlit windows, until another curtain rises somewhere else. He left through the main doors, stepping into the pale Parisian light. The theatre emptied, but the lessons lingered. Chapter 10. Poirot reviews the performance. The Grande Maison de Couture, Duval in Paris, was the perfect stage for tragedy. Elegant Art Deco halls gleamed under crystal chandeliers, every model and designer playing their role in the world of haute couture. Then, Madame Elise Duval, the visionary couturière, was found dead amid the silks and sequins of her rehearsal runway. Her body lay crumpled on the polished stage, a champagne flute shattered beside her, foam at her lips, suggesting poison. The police saw a tragic accident, perhaps tainted champagne from a rival, but Hercule Poirot saw a performance. Someone in this theatre of glamour was playing the role of innocent, the role of murderer. The curtain rises. Sound effect. Soft clink of a porcelain cup being set on a saucer, followed by the gentle hiss of steam rising from hot tisane. Hercule Poirot sat in the quiet comfort of his small Parisian apartment on a cool May evening. The windows were open just enough to let in the distant murmur of traffic along the Seine and the faint scent of blooming chestnut trees. A low fire crackled in the grate, its warmth pleasant against the slight evening chill. And on the small rosewood table before him rested a tray, a pot of tisane still steaming, a single crystal glass of water, and a plate of plain biscuits arranged with geometric precision. He had returned from the Maison de Couture Duval only that afternoon. The house had already begun its quiet rebirth. Marie Duval had sent him a short, dignified note of thanks. Jacques had retired to a small villa near Fontainebleau. Sophie Laurent was thriving in Milan under a new name on the credits. Vivienne Roux had been seen at several discreet charity events, funding young designers without fanfare. Pierre Moreau awaited trial in Fresnes prison. His letters, carefully censored, spoke of regret rather than excuses. Poirot lifted the tisane cup to his lips. The herbal steam carried notes of chamomile and verbena, calm, orderly, restorative. He touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully, then set the cup down with care. Another curtain has fallen, he murmured to the empty room. And yet the questions remain. Why do human beings prefer performance to simple truth? He leaned back in the deep leather armchair, its surface smooth and warm from long acquaintance. People wear masks because society applauds the costume more than the person inside it. In the world of haute couture, this is especially clear. Appearance is currency. A flaw, a wrinkle, a tremor, a moment of genuine feeling can bankrupt one's reputation in seconds. So we rehearse. We practice smiles in mirrors. We time our pauses. We measure our tears. We learn which gestures signal grief, which signal loyalty, which signal innocence. Yet the body refuses to cooperate forever. Guilt always betrays the actor, and the hand that pours poison does not tremble when it should. The eye that has seen death before the announcement does not redden with true shock. The voice that has rehearsed outrage speaks too smoothly. These are not accidents. These are the involuntary confessions of the little grey cells when the conscious mind insists on lying. I recall the case of Roger Ackroyd. A man performed shock and grief so convincingly that even those who knew him best believed every tear, every shaken word. He had practiced in front of mirrors, widening eyes, dropping jaw, steadying breath. He had timed his sobs, measured his silences. Yet one small detail undid him. When the news was broken, he reached for his cigarette case with perfect steadiness. A truly devastated man fumbles. His fingers shake. His hands betray the chaos inside. The body remembers truth, even when the face has learned to lie. So it was with Pierre Moreau. He handled the poison glass without hesitation because he already knew its secret. An innocent man recoils from death's instrument. A guilty man greets it like an old acquaintance. Why does truth ultimately triumph over performance? Because deception demands constant energy. Lies must be remembered, cross-checked, layered, protected. Truth requires none of this. It simply is. The actor grows tired. The memory falters. The gesture slips. And when the curtain is pulled back, whether by a detective's question, a forgotten letter, or a single unguarded glance, the entire edifice collapses under its own weight. In the theater of crime, no performance is perfect. The spotlight of psychology finds every crack. Greed masquerading as ambition, it love twisted into possession, loyalty curdling into resentment, fear wearing the mask of helpfulness. Each costume is beautiful, tailored, sequined, perfectly fitted. Yet each conceals the same human frailty. We perform because we fear judgment. We fear exposure. We fear being seen as ordinary, flawed, needy. Yet the moment we drop the mask, relief floods in. Sophie's real tears in the final confrontation. Jacques' quiet walk by the river without a cigar. Marie's calm hands folding fabric without hurry. Vivienne's ungloved fingers resting quietly on cold marble. These are not staged moments. These are the first honest breaths after years of holding pose. The psychology of revelation is simple. Truth liberates. Performance imprisons. Poirot arranged the biscuits symmetrically once more, though no one was there to see the order. Until the next theater of crime opens its doors, he said softly to the firelight, Hercule Poirot will continue to watch. Not the grand gestures, not the rehearsed lines, the small ones. The ones that slip when no one thinks they are being observed. The trembling hand, the averted eye, the too steady grip on a fatal glass. He lifted the tisane cup again, savoring its warmth. The curtain falls on one drama, only to rise on another. But the lesson remains the same. Masks may dazzle for a season, yet truth endures beyond the final bow. He smiled, small, satisfied, private. Bonsoir, mes amis. Sleep well. Poirot will be watching. Until the next theater of crime, mes amis, Poirot will be watching.